Spirit guides aren't necessary. A lot of people believe that they need them to spiritually awaken, though, or that if you have a bunch of them, that it somehow means you are awakened. You might think that they're universally good. You might believe that a spirit guide's going to tell you exactly what to do or not do. But none of that is true. In this episode, we dive deep into what guides are, how to tell guides who are from a higher level of consciousness who are there to help you versus darkness masquerading as guides, and what the purpose of guides really is. And after the discussion, we get to the most important part. The group frequency calibration associated with this episode is where the frequency work happens and where change actually occurs. So be sure to listen to that. Without releasing distortion patterns targeted by the GFC, the change you want will be more difficult to attain because you haven't addressed the root of the issue. If you like this episode, please help us out by hitting the like button and sharing this episode. It helps us get our content to more people like you. My name is Karen Cheong, and today in Mastering Your World Through Frequencies, we're talking about guides and spirit guides.
In this episode, we have titled it Guides.
Yeah.
But what we're actually going to cover today is all the different types of guides that people kind of think about when they think about being in the arena of the spiritual world or living a life that is about ascending and becoming awakened. So what would be awesome is if we can break down what we think are all the types of guides, labels that we give guides that are somehow helpful to us on a frequency level.
Yeah.
And then the ones that you kind of want to stay away from.
Yeah, exactly. Because there is a lot to watch out for in terms of what people think are guides and whether or not. So first, I just want to preface this conversation before I even define it, which is what you've asked me to do, by saying that a lot of people will feel like they need to have some kind of guide in their spiritual journey, okay? Whether the person is embodied or, a disembodied being or whatever.
And by embodied and disembodied, you mean?
Like a person who's like me in flesh or any other teacher person or a being that they perceive in their inner vision, for example.
So people often call them spirit guides.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Those are the ones that people call spirit guides.
And so what's the difference between a spirit guide and a spiritual guide?
Yeah. So for my purposes anyway, a spirit guide is a disembodied being that shows up at key points in time to help you have a bigger perspective, to point you in a different direction, to perhaps show you a way that you hadn't thought of before. But what I want to preface this by saying is that if the spirit guide is actually of a higher dimensional order, meaning a higher consciousness level order, which is there to benefit you, they will never insist that you do something. Okay? Because they have no desire to control you or to control the outcome. They're simply allowing for life to unfold based on your free will because they respect the authority of the free will of every sovereign being. So if you're a higher level consciousness being, you're aware of that sovereignty and you won't want to infringe on it. You have no need to.
Yes.
It doesn't, they have no vested interest in an outcome.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, totally. So if I ever hear somebody saying to me, my spirit guide told me to go here and do this, then you kind of be thinking, wait, that might not be a higher level spirit guide?
I would question that because my experience with spirit guides is they'll sort of like present information to you. So maybe if you're the type of person who sees imagery, for example, they might show you the image of something or they might give you the feeling of something or there might be like, I don't know, like a sense of like, oh, I have to go to that restaurant, right? That I've been meaning to try, for example, right?
Yes.
And you don't know why. And it's not like they tell you anything else. It's not like, and when you're at the restaurant, you will be looking for a woman wearing blue. And when you find her, you will say the following words to her. Okay, it's not like that. Okay, exactly. It's not a movie script. So it's almost like they're bringing your attention to something that you wouldn't have necessarily been looking for. And then what you choose in that moment is up to you based on your own discernment, your own free will, your own wisdom, how high your resonance is. Okay? And you can choose to not do it, of course, right? So my point is that they will not tread on your free will. That's why they don't give you like the laundry list of exactly all the minutiae you're supposed to do, because they don't know what you're going to choose.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So the other thing that I just want to mention before I talk about what a spiritual guide is, in distinction with spirit guide.
Yep.
So the other thing that I have to say is that a higher level being will never frame something in the negative. Like, you should not do that.
Oh, I see.
Do not do that. Because again, it's like the inverse of what we said of the you should. It's like that's not how higher level beings function, because it's really about life unfolding and respecting your free will. So they're not going to tell you not to do something, right? It's your choice as to what you do or not do. So there's never any like, you are doomed if you do this because it's terrible for you. Because for them, that's not their function. You know, it's like your choice as to whether or not you pay attention to your own warning signs or wisdom or knowingness or whatever. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, but what about them moments when, you know, maybe you're going to get in a car and you get this,
yes.
No.
Yes.
And something bad's going to happen.
Yes.
I'm not getting in that car.
Yes. So that's like for you to in that moment be like, but that's not necessarily a guide. That's you being like, you're determining with your own sense in that moment, do I get in the car or not? So I've had a situation. So for example, I'll just, in case it's helpful. My husband, Chris, and I were in Ireland, and we were visiting friends, and we decided that we needed to go see this cave thing. I don't know why, but we felt like perhaps it was important in some way. So when we get to the cave thing, we enter the, you know, the parking lot where the thing is, right? So we enter the parking lot. And as we enter the parking lot, we get this really creepy feeling from this group of people who's sitting right near the entrance. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. It's weird that we even notice them, that they just feel a little bit weird. Okay.
Yeah.
So we park far away from them. And then as we get out of the car, there's this like swarm of flies that circle the car. I was like, there's no flies anywhere else. No flies anywhere else. But there's a swarm. And I was like, this is really weird. Yeah. And as we start to approach the, whatever you call it, the cave thing, I had the sense of one of a guide that I had at the time, and he was standing in front of the cave. Now, again, I could have avoided, but all of these signs were happening, right? Of like, this doesn't quite feel right. So as soon as I felt him, I was like, we're at a no. We need to leave right now. We need to go right now. So, I mean, I think the swarm of flies would have tipped off like most people, but apparently we were very in our minds and like, okay, this is what we need to do. Yeah. So we needed a little extra. Now, could we have still gone? Yes, it wasn't like, you know, a big rock rolled down the mountain and crushed my leg, preventing me from entering the thing. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. We could have still chosen to proceed, but that's like as firm a no as you're ever going to get from a spirit guide. And it wasn't like, you should not come in here. It was like, hey, maybe not such a good idea. Maybe, you know, think about that for a second here. Right.
I see what you're, because I was thinking... I see what you're getting at, because I was thinking about the people that have these spirit guides and really have a strong communication with them,
for sure.
Right? Yeah. And I was thinking, wouldn't the spirit guide want to save that person's life, though, if they were in danger? But so, yes, of course, they're going to get there in a way that would indicate this is not great for you.
Yes.
But ultimately, like you say, it's their
still your
decision.
choice.
Got you. Okay, so that's the spirit guide journey. Let's talk about the spiritual guide. Yeah. I really just want to kind of break it down a little bit because, again, I wanted to ask that question. Do we need a guide for starters? Yeah. And, of course, what does that mean? What type of guide am I talking about? But do we need a guide? And to be awakened or to ascend, you know, do we need the guide for that? Yeah. Or does it serve another purpose?
Yeah.
You know?
So to answer your question, you absolutely do not need a guide in order to spiritually awaken. I think a lot of people get really sort of caught up in this idea like, oh my God, this person has so many guides. Yeah. They're so much more ascended than me. And like, first of all, how do you know those things aren't dark? Yeah, okay, just because they're chatting with these people or beings, it doesn't mean anything. Yeah. And it doesn't indicate anything other than this person, whoever has the guides, is communicating with other beings. Yeah. Okay, so that's my answer with regards to, do you need a guide to ascend? And does it mean anything about you that you have a guide or you don't have a guide? It doesn't actually mean anything. And how you communicate with them will be very specific to you. So, for example, someone like me has something more akin to like an inner vision or like a knowing or a feeling.
Yeah.
For my husband, Chris, it's a feeling in his body, and he doesn't know why, right? So he'll get like goosebumps or like a prickly feeling on his skin, or his stomach will clench, or something like this. Or he'll just all of a sudden find himself asking a question, or he'll just know we need to go here. None of that is feeling, seeing, anything.
Yeah.
Right? So I just say that because we all receive information in different ways, and some people are actually receiving information and not realizing that they are.
Yeah.
You know? Do you want to actually begin to clear the distortion patterns we're talking about? Then click on the link in the description below to get the free group frequency calibration meditation specific to this episode. That's where the change actually happens.
When people get really attached to this spirit guide thing, they're completely disempowered in themselves.
Of course. Yes, exactly.
I mean, it's somehow that inner wisdom and intuition has become the spirit guides.
Yes.
And not theirs.
Exactly.
So wait a minute.
Exactly. Exactly. Which is the counter to the point of a true spirit guide. Because a true spirit guide is there to empower you, to have you remember your own authority, your own free will, trust in yourself, in your own knowingness. So if they're choosing for you, like we mentioned before, it totally disempowers you. So as you said, like a lot of people nowadays are like, well, the so-and-so told me this and the so-and-so told me that. I'm like, well, what did you feel?
Yeah.
Like, what did you want to do?
Where are you in that equation?
Exactly.
Because you have to be.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because you're the one ascended.
Exactly. And for those of you who are relying too much on your spirit guide, you're only going to get to a certain level and you won't be able to go any further in terms of your spiritual ascension. Why? Because part of awakening is recognizing your own authority, your own brilliance, your own magnificence as divinity embodied, right? And I didn't say that you are God. I just said you're an aspect of the divine in an embodied experience.
Yeah.
So to have all that awareness, you need to have your own authority and not rely on someone else or put your power outside of yourself.
Yeah.
So if you always rely on a guide to give you certainty or clarity, you're not developing your own.
Yeah, right. That's what I was wondering too. And then I was also wondering, I know we're going to come back to spiritual guide.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was also wondering, as we rise in frequency, as we become clearer and can understand that that's already inside of us, that innate kind of inherent understanding of that creation that exists and how we can co-create and multidimensional being that we are, all the lovely, amazing descriptions of what human is beyond the 3D.
Yeah.
As we rise in frequency, is it or does it happen that there's no need anymore for a guide? Not that we needed it in the first place, but, you know, sometimes these guides are there to help us wake up.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So does there come a point where the guides just stop coming?
Oh, that's interesting. I think it depends on who you are.
All right.
And I think it depends on how quickly you want to grow. And I think it depends on your purpose and who you're meant to impact and how you are meant to contribute.
Yeah.
Okay? Because I think that a lot of people think that they have to do a certain thing, if not they failed in their purpose.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily true, actually, right? So just for clarity for everyone, your purpose is to awaken in this lifetime.
Yeah.
How you express anything else is wonderful and up to you. You have this beautiful lifetime in order to express how you want to contribute to humanity. Fantastic.
Yeah.
However you do that to help everyone rise. And if you don't want to help anyone else rise and you simply are rising yourself, that in fact is a powerful act because in your ascension, that's a ripple effect out into the oneness for you to have that kind of impact into the field where then other people can rise because you have.
So you're talking about the collective field?
Yeah, the collective field. So I'm saying that because you don't have to have some grand purpose.
Yeah.
Right? So to go back to your question, does everyone need a guide until a certain point? It really depends on who you are. So my feeling is we still have beings that can come in even as your frequency resonance rises because you are human and you're embodied and there's an infinite awakening process.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're completely clear and like know everything about everything. You're not consciousness. You're embodied. You have a brain. Like you have limitation because you're in the embodiment and that's awesome.
And can I add also that we're co-creators, so how can we know everything?
Exactly.
As we rise, what can we create that we haven't experienced yet?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't want to know everything.
Exactly. It takes away the beauty and the joy and the growth potential of being human.
Yeah.
If you have too much visibility, there's no experience.
Yeah.
And it's funny because a lot of people will ask me this about, even the retreats we give. It's like, well, what's going to happen? I'm like, I don't know yet.
Yeah.
I don't know yet. And because, I myself am having my own journey.
Yes.
And if I knew it all in advance, it not only would be boring, but it would limit what it is that could happen.
Yes.
And so, because, one person deciding something is one thing and it's powerful. But when you have a mastermind collectively coming together to really contribute to the highest level order of vibration, what's possible exponentially expands.
Yeah.
So you kind of limit yourself, if you're like, this is what's going to happen. I mean, how do you know?
A, B, C, D.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
because the catalyst, it's supposed to charge that equation and make this amazing thing happen.
Yeah.
And that's like you say, when you know that this is something you got to do, you're that catalyst, if I use that word. And then when the collective comes together, we have no idea what the end reaction is going to be from that catalyst, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of amazing what can happen. So to answer your previous question is, do we stop having guides? Like I said, it depends on who you are. And really the funny thing is, the less that you need a guide, because you recognize your own authority, you recognize your own center, you recognize your own power, you trust your own knowingness enough to, take action or follow a certain way or do a certain thing. That's really the important bit. So once you get strong enough to do that, you kind of don't need one in the same way, because you're relying on yourself.
Yeah.
Right? And your own innate, beautiful connection with pure source.
Yes.
And the funny thing is, that's kind of when guides will show up sometimes.
Yeah.
When you're not expecting, you're like, oh, hello.
And then oftentimes it's a different type of guide.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
We know one being, shall we call him, that is in a human body, kind of.
Yes.
I guess.
Yeah.
But
barely.
Yeah. And we know that he can project his being to wherever it needs to go. And we, on both occasions, several occasions, different occasions, have seen this being project his consciousness, right? So I'm wondering if that's what happens as you rise in frequency, that it's not so much that they're there to kind of guide you to where you're meant to be. It's almost like they guide you to what's potentially possible.
Yes.
I was wondering if you felt the same thing with that.
Yeah, I feel that way too. So, as you said, there are a lot of people when they think of spirit guides, just to go back to what you just mentioned, will think that all spirit guides are disembodied, meaning that they're out in the field somewhere and you tune into them with your inner awareness, however you do that. Yeah. But there are spirit guides who are very high-level consciousness beings who are embodied at this time. And they often are surprising because they're very quiet. They often can be overlooked because they're not particularly flashy. They have no need to be. They're a high dimensional order being. Yeah. And they're very aware of their intrinsic connection to the oneness. They don't need to force anything, actually, at all. It's not what they're here for. And so it depends on the being, but they can show up in both ways. Yeah. And you're right, as your resonance rises, the type of spirit guide that becomes available to you or who presents to you changes. That's my experience too. And sometimes, for me, I've noticed the ones that are very high in resonance don't have a form. Yeah. It's simply like a resonance or a light. Yeah. But I'm aware it's a being. Yes. It's kind of a weird thing to say that because you're like, well, how do you know? I'm like, I just know. Like, I'm aware of the imprint of this being. It's a very clear resonance for me. I'm aware of them. Yeah. But they're so high in the resonance, they don't even have form. Yeah. And so my point is, I think if you cling to an idea of what a spirit guide is, as portrayed in books or in other people's stories or whatever, then you're limiting yourself. Mm-hmm. If you're relying on the spirit guide to give you certainty in terms of your spiritual journey, it will limit you. Mm-hmm. And it also takes away your own power. Yeah. And the third thing is that I feel like with a higher level spirit guide, again, they are not vested in a particular outcome. Yeah. They really are not. Because if they are of a higher resonance, they're not attached.
Yeah.
It's simply life unfolding. So they don't need to make you do anything. So
I think it's hilarious too that, a couple of these high level beings that we both met, they talk in riddles. They don't give you any straight answers.
Yeah.
They just talk in, I guess to us it's deciphered as a riddle, but they're cryptic because they're deliberately not trying to give you any answers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, deliberately. And they also are speaking linearly.
Yeah,
that's my experience of them. So they're speaking non-linearly within the construct of language, which is linear.
Yeah.
So for me, what I attempt to do, sometimes more successfully than other, I just feel the resonance of the words.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, it's not the words. Detach from the words. Feel the resonance behind the word. Because, you know what I mean? Because they're saying something that makes no sense to your mind because it's not for your mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's a really higher level of consciousness being, they're very uninterested in your mind. They're like, for your spirit.
Yeah.
So you can awaken. Here, my gift to you. You know what I mean?
Take a sip of this juice.
Exactly. Totally. Now, I think you asked me a question about the spirit guides that are not so good. I think you asked me that, yeah?
I'm getting there. Sorry. I'm still aware that I've asked you the spiritual guides.
Oh, spiritual guide.
I'm like, wait a minute now.
Yeah.
So because I think you alluded to earlier in the conversation as well that not all spirit guides are great, and that they can be masquerading. They might not necessarily be the spirit guide. It can be something else masquerading as
a spirit guide, yeah.
So how do we discern?
Yeah. So you discern from the level of control that the being does or does not exert over you.
Right.
So if the being tells you exactly what to do, if there's any sense of punishment if you don't do it, or like reward if you do, if there's a strong prohibition like you should not do that, anything like that is an indication that this is a being that is really not that elevated and also may be darker. Because again, like I said, a higher dimensional order being has no desire to do that. They have no desire to control you. Zero. They're meant to empower you. So if someone is telling you very specifically to do something or not to do something, that's a very good indication that it's not of a higher level order. Okay.
So like I learned one time, I think it was actually from you.
Oh.
That the way to really kind of make sure, because if you have doubts, because I'm thinking if you're new to this and you have been looking for a spirit guide because you do believe that will indicate that you've grown somehow. So what the question that I think you told us was a great question to ask is, are you from pure source?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Right?
Yep. You can ask that too.
Just as something for any listener that's tuning in, it's that this is the question that you can. So this is the question you can ask, and what should we expect in response?
Yeah. So thank you. So you can ask any permutation of that question. Like, are you from pure source? Are you completely aligned with pure source? Are any kind of permutation of that?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I don't know why this rule is true, but the darkness cannot lie about that.
Right.
So if they are of the darkness, what will happen in your inner vision is they will somehow either disintegrate, get smaller, diminish, fragment, like run away. They'll do some kind of thing that they'll get smaller in some way.
Yeah.
If they are aligned with pure source, typically speaking, what will happen is they'll expand. That's my experience of it. Because they're like, of course, they have no need to hide behind that question. And in fact, my experience is they'll show you how much they are of pure source. And you're like, oh, well, that's really brilliant. Okay. You know what I mean? They got bigger. And sometimes what will happen is they'll even giggle, because they think it's funny that you're asking them this question, but they also understand why you're asking them that question. They kind of find it like not funny, like in a way that diminishes you, but they'll think like, it's kind of cute. Yeah. You're asking this question.
Okay, so if we're asking a spirit guide that question, and what if that, I'm not sure if this is even possible, but what if that spirit guide does make itself bigger, even though it is on the dark? Is that even possible?
No.
Right.
They'll crumble. They can't. Okay. They literally can't do it.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know why it's a rule, but I have every single time they can't do it.
Okay.
And so they'll, like I said, diminish in some way. When asked directly, you have to ask them directly. If you assume, because they all look shiny and bright, that's on you.
Yeah.
You must ask them.
Okay. Okay. I think that's really valuable information. Okay. Right. Finally.
Yeah.
Let's get to the spiritual guide. And then don't let me forget the last question I will ask is, how would you describe yourself? 'Cause, we've been talking about guides, and here you are. This is, I don't know if it's new, but it's definitely revolutionary, the work that you're doing when
Thank
we're
you.
talking about frequency and raising our frequency resonance and understanding that we broadcast. And when we change that frequency broadcast, we can change our whole reality.
Yeah.
So, and which seems to have been a fundamental step that was missed in all these books about manifestation, because it all came from the mind and creating with the mind. And what you're saying quite clearly is it's nothing to do with the mind, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's to do with your frequency resonance.
Yeah.
So some folk might say that you're either a guide, a spiritual guide, once we understand what a spiritual guide is, or you're an embodied guide. I mean, and it's I know it can be an awkward question to ask.
Yeah. It's okay. I'm dealing with my feelings of awkwardness. It's all right.
Yeah. So maybe if I ask the question first, what's a spiritual guide?
Okay. So I think to me, a spiritual guide is what a lot of people would call a spiritual teacher. You know what I mean? Like somebody who tells you certain things, reveals certain things, helps you along your way, helps you to clarify, gives context to your mind.
Yes, so knowledge-based.
Yeah, knowledge-based and like mentally based. Okay. And look, I'm not poo-pooing the knowledge base because your mind needs context. If not, you're just like, okay, I don't know what any of this means. And you are human and you have a mind and you need to have context.
Yeah.
So
sometimes that context helps the person relax and move in to something else, right?
Yes, and into like a different kind of realization.
Yeah.
So I feel like a spiritual guide is typically a being that's embodied, meaning a person, like a human-bodied person. Now, what I will say about spiritual guides is that not all spiritual guides are the same. Some of them have a lot of ego mind stuff. Yeah. That was my experience in my journey.
Mine too.
So I was just like, whoa, you have a lot of distortion around, I don't know, sexuality, needing to be adored, wanting to be loved, needing to be seen, whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
Like, it's not bad. Okay, please no, I'm not judging. It's just a very human thing. But be aware, if you are receiving information from somebody who has not taken a look at and cleared enough of their distortion, that is the filter through which they are receiving information and then passing it.
Yeah.
Right?
I would also agree the lack of integrity that's there. You know, the experience I had was somebody that was very publicly telling everybody else what they need to watch out for, with the ego mind and everything, and what they need to do. And well, in the meantime, in the background, they were doing the exact thing that they were telling everybody else it's best not to do. So for me, that's like, wait, what?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then watching everybody make excuses for that behavior was even more shocking for me.
Yes.
I'm like, wait, I'm in it.
Yeah.
No, you can't have the face doing this and behind the actions doing something else.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not integrity and that's not congruent.
Yeah.
So,
and nor is it awake.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. So, we're talking about
the same thing.
Yeah.
So, like I said, spiritual guide is something that a lot of people want, right? It's not disembodied in this case. It's somebody who will help them.
Yeah.
So, look, I've had a number of guides in I've learned from lots of different people, right? And some of them are people that weren't even teaching. Yeah. You know what I mean? They're people I ran into my life and I was just like, whoa, I just received a lot of wisdom from this person. Yeah. I don't know if they even were aware that they were passing it to me, but I received that from them. And so in a way, they were a spiritual guide of sorts because there was a lesson that I learned from them that was important and foundational to me to become the being that I am now.
Yes, yes.
And that helped me to ascend in whatever way it was at that time.
Yeah.
So I think with spiritual guides, we lock it into what it's supposed to mean.
Yeah, and what it looks like.
What it looks like. Mm-hmm. But really, it can be much broader than that. And to be aware, like you said, of integrity, congruence, and also what you think you want from them. Meaning what are you projecting onto them? Do you want them to be this elevated being? Because if they're elevated, then you have a chance in hell of ascending, And a lot of people will turn a blind eye to different beings that are ascending because they're so desperately hoping to be saved by that being. And oh my God, if they notice the things that are incongruent, that maybe that person can't save them, and that happens a lot. So I think it's really important when you're assessing your spiritual guide to feel into it and see if it's congruent and in integrity with what it is that you wish to embody yourself in terms of your own frequency resonance.
Yeah, and I would love to add too that some of the most beautiful spiritual guides on this planet embodied that I've met have never once tried to tell me what's right and wrong. Never once. And I have tried. Stomped my feet and tried. Just tell me. No. Nah. And every time I get the answer, I can't tell you what to do. This is your journey.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah. And a lot of people will say, if you just tell me what to do, I'll do it. But that's the thing. It's about you finding your way to what you feel like you need to do, right? They're not going to disempower you by telling you. Yeah.
Right. So let's come back to my difficult question.
So,
because I have to ask. I mean, people might be saying, "Why is she asking her this?" Because lots of people have asked. Actually, they've written in and asked, and at live events, how would you describe Karen? You know, I'm like, well. She's my friend. And obviously I could have a longer discussion about that, but I mean, your purpose here, as far as I can see it, is to help raise consciousness and help people awaken in their physical bodies in this lifetime.
Yeah.
I would describe that as a guide.
I would say that I'm a guide. I prefer the title of, I mean, if you have to have a title, but I prefer the descriptor of guide to like guru or teacher, because in that dynamic, there's I am better than. Right?
So sorry, what are you saying? Clarify that.
So what I mean by, I don't think of myself as a guru or teacher. Okay, because I don't think of myself as better than.
Yes.
I don't think that's.
I think most people would say that all the way through everything that you've ever been passing on to your clients is that you're always saying, I had this triggered, I did this trigger, I had to clear this distortion, I'm still human, I'm still going through my stuff. You're forever saying that to people. Yeah. So no, I would never describe you as ever saying you're better than somebody else.
Yeah. And so I feel like as a result, I don't know how long somebody will be within my field in the sense of what it is that I have to share.
Yeah.
And I'm not attached to it.
Yeah.
And people will often ask me, especially if they're new, after the end of a first IFC, like a first one-on-one session with me, they'll say, should I have another one? And I will never answer that question.
Oh, wow.
Because I always will say to them, I can't answer that for you. That's, whether or not you need a session with me. That's for you to decide.
We're talking about your individual frequency calibration
my individual
sessions.
Frequency calibration. So my feeling is that I am very aware, given the power dynamic that can happen in a spiritual journey, that people would want to give me their power. And I refuse to take it because that's not my role.
Yeah.
My role is to empower you, not to take your power from you.
Yes.
So I would say that, yes, I am a guide. So I'm here to create a different perspective for you, to show you possibilities that you might not have been aware of, to potentially give context to what it is that you may or may not understand and might need to accelerate your journey. And what you choose is 100% yours.
I would also like to add that it's palpable, the frequency resonance that you maintain, shall we say. Not even maintain, because I know in the time that you started this path that you were kind of pushed into, because I know that you weren't looking for this path. No. Personally, I know this.
Yeah,
so
no.
I don't think many other people know this, but personally, I know that you didn't choose this path.
No.
And it happened because you were just doing the work for yourself. And then you had what happened to you. We won't talk about that here. That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
And you hold a frequency resonance, but in the journey, it's gotten higher. And it's gotten higher and it's gotten wider. So I think that's part of the purpose as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, let's not skip that one.
Yeah.
You are holding a frequency resonance and it keeps rising. And then if people want to come in and feel that and remember that, because that's one point that you always make, you can be this frequency resonance.
Absolutely.
It's not just you.
No.
And that they can match that and hold it and train to it and be in that same frequency resonance and watch their physical reality transform.
Yeah.
And that's the magic of it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't think we should have skipped past that. That's why I went on it.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm the type of person who's always very curious and growth oriented. It's just the nature of who I am. So I'm not going to I'm like, well, what else is possible? What else is possible? What
Yeah.
else is possible?
Yeah.
And then I share it because why not?
Yeah.
Because this really is about catalyzing consciousness, as you said. And the more of us who remember who we truly are, the more that others can do the same. And it takes less and less and less time for that to happen. And that's really how you change the world. Because if you remember who you truly are, not from the resonance of lack, but really from the limitlessness, the abundance, the connection that you have to everything, that creates a whole different kind of reality for everybody.
Oh, yeah. I mean, really, if everybody would just, get on board the frequency bus. That's just my humble opinion.
Now you have a better sense of what to look out for with spiritual guides. So how can you tell who's really walking the talk? How do you discern who's really in alignment and can help you raise your resonance? Check out my next video, which is all about walking the talk, new paradigm leadership, to find out more. I'll see you inside.